How we
Can you give me a little quick reason for tree removal? Why we have a line
Yes,
item?
Because we need it for the, around the
For
walkways and the park, and there's dead stuff, and.
There's stuff that's
Come to
dying.
Park Rec and Greenway meeting, you'll learn all about it.
This is really a public safety issue.
I'm not involved.
The tree removal is really a public safety issue, just from a liability standpoint, to make sure we don't have trees falling on people and that
Okay, so
sort of
this is, and maybe a little bit of money, because there are individual landowners here that may fall into this. They just can't go cut a tree down. I know
This
our
is on the
neighborhood.
blue, I mean on the, this is in the park.
Okay, but is this
walkway.
Limbs. It may not necessarily be entire trees. I think it's like cleaning up the walk through. Like
but our neighborhood got dinged for it, and when they really shouldn't have. I mean, they went through the process.
We're giving ourselves permission to do it.
Okay, so on that particular project, if you turn 3 pages back, there's actually a detail sheet that explains that in depth. It says that our park manager walked through the park with an arborist. They identified risk hazards on village-maintained property, mostly around the park.
Okay.
So when you see something that's listed here, it should be supported in the back with some documentation.
Okay.
I did not, where it says administration, I have not physically gone through and done these detail sheets because I just really put this together this week trying to get numbers in here. So where it says, at the bottom where it says administration for the department, you won't see detail sheets on that.
Okay.
It's just, I wanted to make sure y'all are okay with this before we actually went and provided more detail.
It's the park and any greenways or anything.
Yes. We're actually working right now, or we did last week, to remove some dead fallen limbs on the loop.
Right.
So this is mainly the park.
Right. But I mean, it could be used for the greenway on the loop.
What the estimate that we have right here is just for the park. That 13,000. We actually physically got an estimate for that.
And that's only for 1 year.
Correct. Yeah.
We're not projecting any.
That's just a one-time kind of swoop and getting everything done. We don't think that we're going to need it. We're going to try to do it in operating expenditures moving forward. It's just we haven't done it in so long that it's kind of built up.
Needed a big chunk.
Yeah.
Okay.
We feel like we can do it annually and get stuff done. But this, yeah. So the Lakeside Corridor, these are things that the Parks and Recreation will probably talk with you about this afternoon. In addition to their greenways one that y'all have that's a little bit different. That's a completely separate one. But these are some of their priorities that they have actually sat through and talked about and discussed, and that's how they feel they want to see their priorities take place in the years that they've got it slated. And that's what they're asking. They're making this recommendation. I'm assuming y'all made this recommendation and approved it in your last meeting, or no?
It wasn't filed yet. That's why I wanted to get a copy from you.
Okay.
So what we can do in our portion is I'll go through them and just say what we
Okay.
formally approved it.
So, and we're not asking for approval on this right now. And just so y'all know, from a standpoint of approval anyways, when this gets approved, it's not set in stone. It doesn't mean we're definitely going to do Lakeside Corridor. It just means that y'all agree to that priority in that given year. If the budget allows it, we'll put it in there.
So for the approval process for this, basically, we'll look through everything. We'll say these are the priorities, and then whenever we're literally going through the budget process, at that point, then that's when we get it approved. So it's not like we have to go Tuesday night and approve this. Okay, so it's through the budget process.
And this is a living, breathing document,
So it changes.
so it changes. It's not. It's not like if Lakeside Corridor is not a priority of yours now, and I say yours as in cancel, then that's probably something that we should talk about when we adopt the CIP plan, because you need to let me know that, yeah, it's a plan, and we want to do it, but maybe not 1920, maybe 22, 23.
Okay, and when are we supposed to adopt this?
We
Or
don't
do we
have
do that
it.
with the budget process?
We would do it right before the budget.
Okay.
We wanted to make sure y'all were, y'all liked this model before we actually spent too much more time on it. So
I do like this model.
it formalizes the process a lot more.
Yeah, it makes it easier to read and see, and breaks it down and shows the priorities.
So we can go through all of them if you want to, but the bottom line is look at the totals at the bottom, and it tells you any given year how much we need to start planning to spend on capital projects. So when we look at next year, we've got $1.636 million that we are going to spend. So we've got to figure out where we're going to get that money. Obviously, you know what our annual budget is. We have to figure out how we're going to get that extra money. When you look at year 21 2021, you see $70,000. So that means as Chris and I go through the budgeting process, we need to make sure we're securing $70,000 somewhere for that project, or those projects. So that's kind of like how we're going to outline our financial modeling.
Just a quick question, I mean, and I wasn't here, I missed maybe. Where do we now, I mean, we're now talking 1.5 million for the village hall, when do we get that number?
We don't, it's just a guess.
I'm saying we had allocated like 900,000 or
We
something.
had a
architect.
meeting with the architect, and that number we had proposed to him, and he almost laughed us out of it. And he said, no, it's just, conservatively, he said in the meeting, 1.5. He goes, but don't be surprised if you go over it.
But we don't formally have any bids or anything.
No,
Not yet.
we won't know officially until we get bids. This is just
Yeah.
a safe number.
Yeah,
that we
okay.
put in.
And then if it's too high, we don't have to take it, correct?
Correct, yes.
The fishing.
Is our roads, do we have a separate place for roads?
We do not, and I'm going to go over that after this.
So,
This is, roads would be completely separate.
oh, okay, so,
Because it
okay.
ties into another fund, which
Yes,
is the,
yeah.
which is really Powellville.
We can put roads in here, but because I want to have a separate discussion about how
Cleaner
we've got
the
it.
other way.
To do that, it makes it easier to.
We know we need to spend X amount of dollars, and she's going to talk about it, but X amount of dollars, and it has to be within a certain amount of years. So it's just
No,
cleaner
I
from
know
a
it.
numbers
No, I
standpoint.
know that, but I'm looking at this 1.636 that we have here, and yet I know that roads, we're gonna come out of, is that gonna come out of the general fund instead of the capital projects?
So when we get to that discussion, I'm basically asking to take all general fund expenditures out of it and just talk about PAL bills. PAL bills. So that being said, if that's what council adopts, then you won't have any general fund dollars going to roads, which basically means it doesn't need to be on this
But we'll
list.
still have general fund.
For roads, no.
No, for for village signs or loop or land acquisitions.
We're only going to rely on Powellville?
We'll get to that in
Do
just
you
a second.
understand my question?
And that's,
No, I'm not sure. You're looking
you
at the
don't
fund
have to, but
balance
that's
schedule, Kim?
that's my suggestion.
All right, sorry, I'm not, okay.
You're saying, we're not going to deplete the general fund completely
No,
just
no,
for
no.
roads.
Yeah, well, no. Okay, so we've got major funds here. So we've got capital project funds, which is this.
No,
No.
no,
Okay. So where is this?
general fund.
General fund. So what's capital project?
So, okay.
Do you understand my confusion? Because it's
Yes.
this capital project there.
This is a capital project ordinance, like a capital project fund. This is a capital project plan. So this is,
The ones that were approved already are in that column. So that
Already approved?
already approved.
Not approved?
No,
This is,
that's operations. So think about it this way, Kim. You have the general fund column is like our normal operations, year to year. Okay, in the government, a capital project fund is something where you put projects that may take longer than a year.
I'm going home.
Why?
I'm just kidding, I'm going to be sitting next to Chris.
It's like,
she looks serious.
Everybody calm
You
down.
did. She was very
serious. I'm confused too on her.
Sorry. I'm just kidding. Calm down.
You want chocolate?
So Ken, this kind of explains, like, there's two buckets. We have a general fund bucket and a capital project fund bucket.
Okay.
These are projects y'all have already decided.
So this is the middle column here? Okay. Okay. All right.
So the money was taken out of here.
Okay.
In your capital project fund, you have Village Hall,
Yep.
which has, I say 900,000, it's a little less than that.
Okay, because I don't have it totally broken down right here.
And
Okay.
then Loop, you have about 130.
Yep.
And don't quote me on these numbers. Farmer's Market, you have 25.
Okay.
And that's already, money is
And that's-
there set aside already.
And that's
We have a new 1.6 coming in the general fund.
hold on. So that's the 1.2 that's sitting
Yes,
here.
all of this adds up to be 1.2.
Got it. Okay.
Now, there's a couple more I'm missing, but for the most part, that's it.
Okay.
Then you have the CIP that we're talking about. It's only a plan.
This.
Yes.
But where's the money?
That's what we'll get to. So let's say next year you have 1.5 that you have to spend.
Okay.
We know we've got 900, and I'm not taking your money, but let's just say I'm going to take this money. we know we've got 1 million right there.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take this capital project fund and we're gonna close it out, these two, we're gonna close them out. We're gonna take that money and move it into general fund as an appropriation and then and move it back out.
For Village Hall right here.
Yes.
Okay.
Or we can keep it in a capital project fund and just spend it out of there, depending on how we need to do it. But basically, it's coming from here, and then whatever the difference is, we've got to figure out how to fund it in general fund.
So this number, this 1.6 number is where we're trying to find money out of this column.
Both columns.
Both columns.
Yes.
Okay.
Majority of that money, and we'll talk about this in just a second, is going to come out of that second column. We're going to take, and
This
again, I'm not
column,
taking your
this
money,
money.
Mary, but let's just say we're going to take some of Mary's money, and we're going to take that Village Hall money. I'm actually going to propose to take money out of land acquisition, which is where that
Which makes sense.
360,000 is. So majority of it is going to come from Village Hall and land acquisition.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
So we'll have some difference that we have to make up somehow.
I got it.
We may be able to find some in general fund in operating, like for next year, for this year, we've estimated maybe a $50,000 overage in revenues. So that's $50,000 we could pull. Worst case scenario, we pull it from fund balance,
Okay.
which is where we have that money sitting where we have those really high percentages. So
Here.
yeah, so then
180, 190 every year that came out, and then the 1 year we were at 70%.
Is this number on here somewhere?
So you have your general fund, remember, is your operating monies. What you operate with. It's kind of your business money that you use day to day. Your fund balance is your savings account.
It's like your fund money.
Yes, this is your rainy day fund.
Okay.
So we would take some of this out to move it to this Village Hall project.
Okay.
To get that 1.5.
Okay, I got it.
But again, I just want to be clear, the CIP is only a plan.
I got it.
If the 1.5 doesn't work in the operating, it just doesn't happen.
So it's only a plan, whereas this middle one's already been approved,
Correct.
and that money is sitting in there for that reason.
Yes.
Got it.
So we had 1.6 coming in the general operating fund, and just to clarify, and you said approximately 80,000 is the monthly cost, right?
Yes.
So if you took 1.6 divided by 12 months, you get $133,000. Difference between 133 and the general operation, that's really what you gotta work with.
Okay.
Because that's that per month thing, but it's where are you gonna put those
And can I
surplus?
make one more comment? The whole reason you set up a capital project fund is because you don't have to reappropriate the money every year. Those are for projects that are going to take longer than 1 year. Okay, because you know how we adopt a general fund operating budget every year.
Yep.
Okay, when you move it into a capital project fund, it can extend over a year. Now, in our case, a few years ago, you all adopted some capital project budgets thinking you were going to work on these projects, but we're now here a couple of years later and we haven't even started some of them yet.
Okay.
So that's why it's a little confusing.
So you would still keep the capital project fund for Village Hall? Because it's gonna take longer than a year, more than likely, from beginning to end. Now, if you feel like it's gonna happen within one fiscal year, you can take it out of the capital project, put it in the operating, and just spend it out of operating. It's just cleaner to keep it in the capital project ordinance so that you don't have to worry about scrambling at the end of the year.
So when do we start talking about our priorities on this?
So what I did with the canceled priorities that y'all handed back to me, I only got 2 back, so I tried to do as good as I could of putting that information in here, but I only got 2. So.
Just for the record, I turned mine in.
And I turned mine in, correct?
Okay, yes, I don't know who turned them in. I kept the envelope.
Oh, you didn't put a name on it?
I didn't put names on them.
Okay. I handed you mine, so I figured you knew it was mine.
And I didn't keep track of who turned them in. I just put it straight in that
I did
envelope.
my
There's
homework.
the top 20, right?
Yes.
It's very hard
Was it hard?
to get. to
Okay,
my
hold on.
top.
So top ones were, this is the order?
I just knew the Village Hall, if I remember, was low on somebody's list. I don't know whose. But I just know that
Determine low, like what?
it was not 1 or 2 or 3.
Yeah, that would have been me. Full disclosure. Just
So-
some-
I put that here for next year because we've been planning and we've been talking about it. So when we go to adopt this, y'all can change your priorities as a board if that's not what you want to see. This is just my first stab at trying to get this done, and we can change it at a later date before it's adopted. But just for illustration purposes, I wanted to get this together in front
We're
of
not
you.
making any decisions, okay.
Yeah, we're not making any decisions on this. We will bring it back to you for approval, but again, I just want to be clear, once it's approved, it's not set in stone. It has to be part of the budget process. Is
So
everybody?
when are you gonna bring it back to us to approve it, and then it's part of the budget process?
It'll be either in February or
Soon.
March,
Should
yeah.
be.
Oh,
Start the
yes.
budget process run March.
Yeah. Any questions?
No,
I know there's probably a lot, but.
that's all right.
No, I'm good. I'm good now. I got it.
Okay, so that's what it is. If y'all want to take it home and look at it, that's just kind of the basis for what we're starting to work through. Again, I'm not asking for approval, it's just so y'all can follow the process.
But tree removal's already been done.
No, it has not. The tree removal has been done on the loop, but it was very minimal. It was $2,000, I think.
Okay, because
This is
I got it. Yeah, that needs to be done.
Real
That
quick,
needs to be done.
since we had this new piece, this loop part, it was a $25,000 kind of bonus, have we moved that money?
Oh, Mary's moved it.
Yes, she moved it.
I'm not talking about the greenways in detail.
Okay.
At work.
So unless y'all have any more questions on this will come back to y'all for approval later. I just wanted for y'all to see the
I got it.
process.
All right.
Okay. This is a good way for us to get the ball rolling on our 5-year planning, basically,
I
so.
like it. I like it. I feel like this is easier for you guys, and it's much easier for me to understand, like, kind of what's allocated where and when.
Yeah, and so a lot of our boards, like Parks and Rec, and we've had this conversation, so she's not going to be offended by me saying this, but like Lakeside Corridor, she's got $25,000 slated in there. That's probably a project that is not going to happen next year because we simply can't afford it. They already know that we've roughly been allocating $10,000 to $15,000 per year on their general use of money. So I've already kind of given her an estimate that I would assume in my head $10,000 to $15,000 is what you have to play with. So when they start talking about these projects, yes, they can put it in the CIP to approve, but when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of things, we're just not going to have $25,000 to put on that. So either we're going to have to talk about financing it or kicking it down the road a little bit.
Or grants.
Or grants, yes, when we have some staff to actually write some grants.
We should hire somebody.
Well, I can do it
I'm
when I
just
get some
kidding.
time.
Christina, I'm talking about we just hired somebody.
So,
Everybody can help.
anyways, so they understand that, they know it, but that's kind of where we're at. Is we have only a certain amount of play money to play with in any given year to do some of these projects, and so this CIP is pretty much where that play money is going to be used.
I like it. It's good.
So if y'all don't have any questions, I'm going to move on to roads.
Okay.
That's one of the bigger ones. So I'm going to pass your index out that you initially approved a few months ago. And if you recall, when we made this approval, I told you that we would still bring the schedule back to you for approval. We were adopting the 4-year plan, but I would still bring it back to you for approval annually. But we did go ahead and approve.
The same 2.8, you gave us 2 of these, the same?
But yeah, they're probably the same.
They're both the same?
Okay.
I had multiple
All right.
copies.
Okay.
Turn to the second page where it says sample. At the bottom of the second page, it says sample 4-year road plan.
Oh.
And then it has Providence Estates, Providence Ridge, Beechwood.
Where's that?
Firethorn.
It's on the backside here.
Oh,
If you look at that bottom number, it says 257.
Yep.
Carried over to the next page with the engineering cost, it's 321.
Yep.
That's what we had initially anticipated it being,
Okay.
which is, I think, what we probably budgeted for this year.
Where's the 321?
At the
The
very
next-
top
Oh, I
of the
see
next
it. I get
page.
it. I get it.
We just got the bill for this not too long ago, or the estimates for it. It was 390, 388, 390.
It's not bad.
So, no, it's not. But what I do want to recognize, and I do want to point out, and this is something that I told you when we adopted this, is these prices do not include inflation. So the numbers that we
So
have
wait,
here,
the 321 doesn't include inflation?
No.
So that's probably where,
yes.
okay.
So the
Well, that's not
numbers,
bad.
the numbers we have in this are problematic from the beginning.
Inflation rate.
So I'm going to pass this out. I've got multiple copies, so just take one.
Trees that we sacrificed.
Okay.
Just trying to be green.
So this is a little bit confusing when y'all look at it, but let me just break it down for you. The first page that says 4-year, look at the one that says 4-year that I've actually handwritten on
Okay.
top.
is that just one page, right?
It's just one page.
The back.
Oh, check that.
Make sure you're on the one that says 4-year. The one that says 4-year is the one that y'all have adopted. This is exactly what the financial modeling goes out for 10, 20 years of how this would look if we actually went through with this plan. If you look in 19, we've got the 388. If you look in 20, With inflation, it's estimated at 515, and you keep going down the list. So if we actually go through with the plan that y'all have, essentially we would have to go up 5 cents on the tax rate just to pay for this schedule over the course of 5 years with inflation.
Well, wait a minute, this is construction, aren't we expecting DOT to participate in this?
Yes,
That's
we
with
took-
them participating?
Yes.
Joe, that's a lot of roads.
I understand that, but it's, yeah, okay.
We took the numbers straight from their list. We actually had this discussion with our
Okay,
engineers too.
okay.
So if we go with this plan as been adopted, we're gonna have to come up with some more money. That-
$1.5 million.
Well, again, my argument back then is like, we get on because initially it was a 20-plus year plan, I think, and it's like, by that time, the group that got their roads done, they may get back in front of the line based on how much it's used, and then you see certain neighborhoods never getting, so I said, that was my argument, if we're gonna do this, we need to do it, can't do it all at once, but do it in a window where everybody understands that, hey, I'm getting something for this.
So with this plan, I have included $30,000 for storm and stormwater and curb and gutter, because that's not something that we initially anticipated, but that's very minimal. That's only $15,000 per
It's
year.
not a lot.
Or, no, $30,000 per year. So it's not a whole lot. So there is the chance we can pull some of that out, but we're still gonna have to go up on the tax rate just to pay for these roads, which I know is not something that y'all are probably interested in. That's the first problem.
Wow, something I said, and everyone said that, I think there was a councilman that said, there's no way we have to raise taxes. I remember that clearly.
That's the first problem that we have. The second problem that we have is if you look at year 2028, this is basically where we have to start sending money back. We'll have to start sending $171,000 back because we have to spend this money that Powell Bill allocates to us within 5 years of an allocation. So there's no way, if you look at the total Powell Bill received, it says 180. We get to a point where we're at 180. Once we finish 100% of our roads, there's nearly no way we're going to spend $180,000 a year on just random maintenance.
But you remember, when you get it, you have 5 years to spend it.
Yes, but
So
you're accruing it each time.
I understand that, but there's,
So if you start talking about,
if you want to take the level of, get the specs up to the point where we expect our roads to be
correct, you're right.
really nice, then
Yes.
we're always going to have nice roads, and I guarantee you that money will be eaten up.
I'm not saying we can't. I personally don't think we could spend that much money, but maybe we can. I don't know.
$170,000 on 30 miles of roads?
A year. Per year.
Easily. If it takes, what we spent $160,000 just to get our roads up to snuff to turn it over to DOT when we
But then
did that
it
process.
gets to $709,000.
That's, yes, what we're sending back because we've
Right.
accumulated so much.
So what
Anyways,
you're saying is scooch it out every other
so
year.
if you turn the page to 8 years, this is an 8-year plan. It's still pretty aggressive in my opinion. This is just using Powell Bill and a minimum amount of general fund money. So we would still be using some general fund. So Kim, let me correct myself because when I told you earlier we weren't going to be using general fund, I forgot we were actually using some. So yes, we are using some general fund. If you look at year 19, we put in $247,000 of general fund monies. That's roughly.
And
that's
the rest, okay, so we're putting in 247 of our money to go towards the 388.
which is roughly 2.5 pennies on the tax rate.
Okay, so the 111, the 30,000, and the 138 is all coming from Powell Bill?
And the 138 is the total of these two.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's
So,
the total actually of these two plus what we have carried over.
okay.
So what this plan says is instead of doing road resurfacing every year, let's skip it every other year. So we're still getting that cost benefit of having a large amount of roads being done at one time,
So then,
and less administrative burden of administering that contract.
so then we're still receiving the Powell Bill funds,
We're building it up and
Of
then spending it.
112.
On them.
but then we're also putting away, I'm sorry.
Yes. That where it says use of general fund, that's what we're putting away each year.
So
that
the
we-
112, we would still put that away even
Yes.
though we're not using it, and then we would take that 146 of Powell bill and just continue to accrue it, and then we would add those two numbers together. Okay.
To accumulate to.
So you don't fear any risk of expanding it out, the inflation between that is not
You've-
gonna,
We've calculated for it.
The engineer gave us a rate to use that he felt included inflation.
We had a meeting with AMT and pitched this idea to them, and they actually thought this was a better plan, 8 to 10 years. I mean, they thought it was more feasible to stretch it out than 4 years. So they have agreed to this. Now, let me just make note that we have, like this year, for instance, we spent $247,000 from general fund. If next year we go from 247 to 112, that frees up some money for us to spend on other projects from a general fund standpoint.
so, let me ask this. Who do you expect, as we go forward, to coordinate all of this with DOT?
Christina.
Yes.
Okay. What portion of your time can we take from your salary and put Powell bill funds towards that?
No, we can.
Really?
We can, yes.
Absolutely.
Well, except,
Well,
we're spending
Yeah, we're
our
spending
Powell bill
Powell.
funds on construction costs. We don't have any extra Powell bill funds to spend, to allocate to salaries.
Oh,
but we
We're spending
can.
more.
Can we
But
do
we
it in
can
arrears,
down
like,
here.
if we're gonna spend money this year that we don't have from Powell bill, but we have arrears because she spent 10% of her time working on this and
But
we don't
there's
even.
no,
There's no
never
extra
get
money
the
to do
point
that.
Because every year we're having to add general funds to our Powell bill to do the roads.
Hang on one second. We
There's
can
no
do that. We
excess
can do that,
funds.
but that changes these numbers, so we would basically be taking general fund to supplement.
I
It's-
just think we should be able to
it's
use
6
Powell
one way,
bill
half a
funds to
dozen
pay
the other,
for.
right?
But if you talk about,
Yeah.
this is an 8-year plan, so yes, we can do that, but to Chris's point, it changes these dollars, and it's just tit for
But
tat.
it's
I understand,
6
but-
one way, half a dozen the other,
That's
doesn't
right.
matter.
But what you could do is take 8 and stretch it to 10 or 12 to have the same financial impact, where general fund is being less impacted by not only salaries, but also the appropriation.
But I like the 8-year because then once you get down here, we've got extra money that we can use because you're still going to be administering and you're still going to have stuff that you're probably not using this 180 for total resurfacing, right?
And now
Yes.
it's fiscal year 31,
Right.
which is
So, to Joe's
13
point,
years after we started.
Which is good, right?
Yeah, that, by 13 years, the first set of roads might need work again.
Right, but they're probably not full.
that's right, this is
They're not
assuming,
really designed for 20 years.
this plan right here,
Out 13.
this 8-year plan is assuming we don't do anything after year 8. So to your point of, being able to spend the money later, we're still back up on this end over here accumulating that we could spend after year 8. So at that point, that's where we start talking about what we're gonna do again.
And we still have the running Powell bill funds. We've got $1 million that we can use for resurfacing. This is just if we don't spend anything, right?
Yes.
So this is all accumulating. So what we're saying is, if we haven't spent anything here, then we got to send this 180,000 back from this one.
And this plan is
So
still,
routine, and I got it.
Spend.
And we've clarified what it can be used and can't be used on, right?
Which we could. So once we're done with the roads, and we may want to, have like a year or two, then we can do sidewalks. We can do loops and greenways. Like we can update some of that stuff too, right?
yes.
With Powell bill?
Yeah.
Another thing, can I point out, remember the other thing, is if you look at the total use of general funds column on the 4-year plan, it's almost $1.5 million. If you look at the total use of general funds on the
Just $1
8-year
million.
plan, it's only $1 million.
So we're saving general fund dollars. And that general fund dollar can be put back into actual projects that we need that are not
Right
road
now.
related. Yes.
Right, okay. I like this 8-year plan. I mean, I was definitely for like, push it through, let's get it done. But I like this, especially when you told me about the balance and like how it's gonna accumulate and start to get a little nutty. So, I mean, I like this plan.
So this plan, there's a picture coming around, I'll explain that in just a second, but this plan is something that if council is amenable to it, then we are going to prepare the budget with this plan in place. So I guess we need to bring this up in one of the council meetings that are upcoming so that we know and we can gauge the level of interest that y'all have with this 8-year plan. Again, I'm not asking for action now, but
Let's put it on the February work session. We can actually talk about it, right?
With the 8-year plan, What kind of tax increase are we talking about?
None.
None on the year?
None.
On the 4 year would be.
5 cents.
We would have to be around 5 cents to do it just like you have
The
adopted.
8 year plan that wouldn't be. Okay.
Not unless something crazy happens and inflation just goes through the complete roof and we haven't anticipated. But we feel pretty comfortable with this. Now, I can't say if we have like a major stormwater drain collapse that we have to use some money for something. I can't anticipate those things, but this assumes everything is well and we
What
still
did
have
they
some.
project how often, the roads are for 20 years, what are storm drains?
It depends on what they're made of. I mean, I've seen anywhere from 30 to 50 to 80. So I don't know what they're actually made of. We couldn't say that until we did a study. So there's another plan too, and I'm not asking for any action on this or anything, but just as an idea, that is another type of road pavement preservation. This is actually it's not an overlay. It's not a mill and fill overlay. It's just a straight overlay. It's called liquid road. This is another option that's massively cheaper than an actual profile mill. So we could have portions of our roads that we put this on or do a pilot project next year to see if it works, to see if it upholds. I think we're going to get our greenways done with this, or the loop.
The loop.
But just an idea I'll throw out there that some roads may actually suffice for this type of overlay, and it would be substantially cheaper. It looks good to me. I don't know if it looks good to y'all.
I think it
But
looks great. Like,
It's
that's like,
great, but
we're
it's,
actually
it's
paving
actually-
road.
I know, but it's actually the structure underneath it, you know.
well, you wouldn't do it on roads that don't have good substrate. I mean, we'd have to do it on roads that are pretty well sound. Like,
Which hopefully any new developments with the level that we
Yeah.
expect, you're not gonna, you
Yeah.
know.
like your neighborhood, we drove through it. Some roads would be fine. Some roads wouldn't. The main road, definitely not, but some of the side roads, possibly. We
For
drove
the
through-
record, I did stop and talk to the guy who believes he may likely be the inspector for it, and said that they are for sure, unlike what they did in the past, is they're gonna plan for milling below the curb level, as long as they have a curb level, and I said, okay, because they missed that last time, so there's no lip involved after they do the overlay. They are gonna mill the edges now, so he said he likely would be that, his name's Justin or something, but I think we'll have our inspector there as well, but he's the inspector on the DOT side, but they will marking up our neighborhood, and by the way, suggesting as early as July, they don't run into the issue of doing it during the school year when we're dealing with neighborhoods. The roundabouts would be for that, so it's encouraging.
So going back to the discussion I had up there about the general fund and like the capital projects and needing the 1.6 for next year. So if we assume all operating costs stay the same this year as they will next year, which is a pretty good assumption. I mean, we may have some changes. We've got, another staff member on board, so we may have some changes in the works. But roughly from what we've appropriated this year to what we would appropriate next year on the 8-year plan, we have a $134,000 difference to spend on general fund projects. So when you talk about that 1.6 for next year, we already know we got 1.5 that we'll talk about in just a little bit. That gives us another $100,000 to put towards these projects to make them happen. So then Mary will be happy when she gets her Lakeside Corridor. So
We're all for your projects.
I like this 8-year plan.
that's the intent.
Makes sense.
So this could be put on the agenda for
Yes.
February, and we can discuss it.
Let's put it on the work session.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions?
No.
Work session, what's your?
I don't need it.
28.
28th February.
That way we can discuss it. And then we can vote on it in March.
Okay.
Because the agenda's already gone out
Yep.
for Tuesday.
Okay.
I'm good on that one if y'all want to move on to the next one.
Great. Good job, Christina.
And
Good
this,
job,
ne-
Chris.
this next one, and I do want to thank Chris because she is involved in a lot of these spreadsheets and coming up with, we've been in my office, in her office, crashing numbers, and it's been fun. The next thing is just a couple of miscellaneous things I just wanted y'all to be aware that we're going to include in the budget, and these are just things I know off the surface. Some other things may potentially pop up. We've discussed the website proposal, 25,000-ish for next year. I've actually got it in the CIP plan, if you note,
I
for next
noted
year. So it's already encompassed in that number. So when we talk about coming up with that 136 or whatever the other number was, which is actually right at what surplus we would have, minus $2,000. So that's, that number's in there. We will put that in the budget if it fits, which I don't have a reason to believe it won't. Transportation plan, Union County is doing a transportation plan. It goes back to this whole realignment. They're trying to update that study. They're asking for $5,000 from all municipalities.
What realignment are you pointing at?
The one, you remember how they had
Marvin.
recently asked
Marvin
about
School.
that, and we told them no.
Marvin School and Waxaw.
Wait, the one where they just built the roundabout?
And then they have, if I'm not mistaken, I think they had plans at some point.
Wait,
to
they
make
wanted
this-
$5,000 for the realignment?
No, for another study. Because I
To
think they had,
realign it?
no, I think they're trying to 4-lane this.
What?
Newtown Road. They're trying to,
4-lane?
4-lane
Yeah.
Newtown Road.
They're trying to see if it still needs to be 4-laned. So
I
that,
argued that we need to own it from roundabout to roundabout. If you
So wait,
wanna
do we
keep
have to
it
give them
clean.
$5,000?
we don't have to, but they've asked for it for their plan, for their study.
Well, we don't want them to do it, so.
Well then, yeah, we don't have to put it in the, we don't have to. They've asked for it, so I told them we would put it in the budget. We don't have to put it in the budget. It doesn't have to.
They're
be
gonna do
approved.
what they want anyways until
So
we
why are
own
we
it.
giving them money to do it? Especially if we don't want them to do
Like
it.
we have a say.
Well, we won't put it in if y'all don't want to give it to them. It's fine.
Well, are they having a? We
They
don't-
can't make us.
Well, I'm saying, yeah, but I'm saying, if we don't put it in, do we have not then get a vote on it? So is it one of the things where, you know, it could be on the committee?
I'll
Or
ask
have
them
the-
that. That's a good question. I'll ask.
Real quick, and
Sounds
not to
like
jump,
bribery.
not to jump back to roads, but we can do, I assume, what is the ask for Providence widening?
29,000.
That's it from us? That's all we're on the hook for?
Because we're not doing the widening, they just want for the sidewalks from us. And
Right.
so whatever out of those three,
It's
I
only
think we took
20,000, of all those choices,
29,000.
only 29,000, that comes out of Palmville.
It can.
No, we were gonna use it fee and lieu money for that.
Yeah.
Oh, fee and lieu from Marvin Gardens?
Okay,
5 years before we have to pay for that.
Yeah, fee and lieu from Marvin Gardens.
okay.
Since our entire board's not here, if y'all are okay with me putting the transportation plan in budget discussions, and then we can decide as a board to take it out, that's fine.
Not yet. I'm sorry, what are we taking out?
Well, I'm gonna keep transportation plan in our budget discussions just because our entire board's not here.
Oh, yeah, I need more
Yeah.
information about this too.
Okay.
Because we get something for it, or we get dinged if we don't do
Yeah,
it. Like
yeah, and I'll try to get some more
Yeah.
information. Personnel policy revision, this is something that we know needs to take place. It hasn't been adopted in updated in several years, so we want to just maybe hire a consultant to come in and do an update on our personnel policy.
Which is like.
I'm gonna guess $10,000, but that's
No, like what policy are we talking, like?
what staff, the personnel policy of staff.
Personnel policy.
There's legal changes that have happened, so for example, with healthcare and things like ACA and all that, and none of those things
But
have
is
been
it
put
like-
into our personnel policy.
Okay, all right, okay.
And that 10,000 is way overpriced. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there just for numbers' sake. It's probably gonna be more like 2 to 5 if I had to really guess, but
Overestimate and
yeah.
overdeliver.
And that's
Nobody
the
thinks
only
something
major things that I know of right now that'll be in the budget. Just wanted to let y'all know. There may be some stuff that come up between now and then, but that's it that I know of. So the next item, unless y'all have any other questions on any of that, law enforcement. This is something that we've been, talking about for several months. I did have a meeting with Union County a couple weeks ago, and they are requesting that we have one more officer. So
Tell
one
me
more-
about that.
They have looked at statistics, and
Like, what did they want? They want another deputy that's out riding the streets, or they
Yes.
want a supervisor who is supervising
Okay.
but not working?
no, they are actually putting in the budget a supervisor to administer contracts. So Wesley Chapel, I think, uses I'm not sure what other municipalities use them, but they would basically have one supervisor that administers all of those contracts and supervises that staff. We don't pay for it. They're actually asking for it from the county budget. They're going to fully fund it. We don't have any impact on that. They're asking for us to add additional officer because they've seen the service calls go up, the volumes go up, but yet we don't have adequate staff to cover it. So that's what they're asking for. It is something that y'all
We
have
don't have
discussed.
adequate staff, we don't have.
I'm
Coverage.
sorry. I should not say that. They feel like we need more staff to cover as far as from law enforcement side. They feel like we need more staff to cover the level
One
of
more
costs.
officer.
Yes. They're actually asking for, I think, 5 more officers at Wesley Chapel, I believe,
Or Weddington?
maybe Weddington.
Weddington already
it's-
has 3.
I can't remember exactly where, but it was 5 in one of these surrounding places, which I thought was a lot. But we started law enforcement in early 2000s.
Mid.
So just so y'all are aware, 2004, 2006, somewhere in that time frame, our population was 1,700. So we've quadrupled population, and we're still using the same law enforcement as we did back then. So just something to think about. But 1 cent on the tax rate will cover a law enforcement officer. Is kind of
Well,
what
I look at it, I'm just looking at the crime rate. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's almost nil.
Yeah, and they did say that too.
And they proposed this a year ago, and we didn't really feel the need for it, and I don't see much.
I don't know. I mean, I brought it up before. I keep hearing people say, you know, it would be nice to have more of a presence, and I know you keep saying go to the HOAs for it, but from what I've heard, that it would be nice to have more, just more of a presence. You can see more,
And that's what they said too.
just, you know, that they're out there. And then this way we can get more than 4 days covered.
So here's what I would propose. If we are gonna even remotely consider that we have the ability to schedule when we want, not them, because I think our hands are tied. In talking to other communities, they basically come to us because they're the only supposedly game in town, and they said, this is our contract, right? And this is what it is, and we have very little say. Whereas in talking to other communities, we can combine our resources with Weddington and all that and kind of like go into this negotiation, because it's never been presented to us where we have any say in much of it, which seems to be a little unfair on our part.
Well,
I mean,
and that's how the contract is written. However, I will say
Exactly.
they've been pretty workable to work with. I mean, we changed Ed's schedule around recently to encompass some of the meetings, and they were pretty flexible with it.
but
So
it was my understanding that through these other communities, that it's not being paid through the general fund. They're asking individual towns to come up and pony up
for the supervisor,
for the supervisor. And I don't need to be paying another supervisor. I'm like, if I'm going to pay anything, I want to see him on the street.
I don't know that's to be the case because they have not requested any dollar amount from us for it.
Yeah.
And I was very clear in that meeting about if they were asking for an increase, I needed to know for my budget. And he said they were putting 100% of that supervisor in their county budget for approval. Now, whether it's approved or not, I don't know.
I mean, honestly, I wish everybody was here because this is the perfect opportunity for us to talk about what the meeting that we went to.
We're still talking about it.
So we do have
There's
this,
no point in talking about it.
we do have this in
Nobody's-
y'all's February
I
meeting.
know, and I think that's really where it needs to be talked about so that we can talk about, you know, just doing some sort of review of public safety and possibly.
Collaboration with other towns
Correct.
involved, whether it's involved in the contract part of it.
Okay.
Because they're doing the same thing we're doing.
Yeah.
But we're all doing it individually.
And so instead of doing it individually, I feel like we're gonna
It's power
be
numbers.
better off
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
join together and try to, and doing some sort of shared services, doing some sort of, you know, and I mean, I think that goes back to the fire and the EMS services too. So I think I really think this is, I mean, again, this is the perfect opportunity to talk about it, but not everybody's here, so it's kind of a moot point, because
Okay.
I
So
think everybody needs to hear everything.
we'll talk about it at the February meeting. It is in your agenda. I think the contract's in there, and I can't remember what else was in there, but it's on your February agenda.
Okay.
We can talk about it. We can hash it out. I just wanted to get the thought in your mind. If y'all were talking about going up an increase, we need to really think about 1 cent, because that's what the equation is.
Is that being addressed? Go ahead.
For one officer, it'd be 1 cent.
Is that being addressed in the survey?
We did have a question
Law
in there.
enforcement
Yes.
safety
Well,
is in there.
just a simple question. Would you be willing to accept a tax increase
I think it's
in there somewhere.
to
Yeah.
pay for
Yeah.
But-
this, and this?
But keep in mind that Jones's point is we'll get it out maybe March, but we're not going to have it back until April,
The
May,
summer.
which we would have already needed to approve our budget by then. So maybe we don't do it this year.
Well, that's another thing.
We could do a
It's not
budget
on the
amendment.
topic, is getting the budget approved.
I want the budget
well
approved before you go out of
you
town.
leave.
But we do have, if we're gonna
I'm
go
not
up in the
kidding.
tax rate, we do have to do that with this budget. I mean, we can't go up in the tax rate after the budget's approved. So,
Can we pay for it without having to go up?
we can, but it may jeopardize some of the other projects or services that we would have in place. I mean, we talked about freeing up that $100,000, which we could use to pay for that without a tax increase, for sure, if we do the road resurfacing schedule, or if we change it to make it 10, 12 years, we could probably free up enough to pay for it. But keep in mind, is I've tentatively already kind of got that money spent on funding these capital projects. So,
Well, I'm just because I don't want to have to rush through getting additional law enforcement and doing a tax increase and it not, like we decide not to do it because we're trying to rush through everything.
And-
I would
yeah.
rather take out the Parks and Greenways master plan. I know that's important, but I don't think that needs to be done this year. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's fine.
40,000.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, this is just me. I think having another officer present, I think that's more important than redoing the master plan for Parks and
Yes.
Greenway.
So yes, we could do it without a tax increase, for
Okay.
sure.
Because, I mean, I understand, we are getting more services, we have more people, the tax rate will probably eventually go up. But if we can do some of this stuff before we have to do that, I would
Yes.
much rather do that. But knowing that, again, we're offering more services, we're doing roads, things are more expensive now. We are going to have to eventually raise taxes.
I mean, yes, there's a possibility to do it without a tax increase, no doubt. That would take changing the POW bill, the roads, like we had just mentioned. It would also take us removing some of these projects that we have, and I would be remiss if I didn't say we at some point would have to really consider going up because we have projects that we've been kicking down
Now I know.
the road.
I know.
So if we did it this year, then this year would be the year we start talking about next year going up. Just-
And just to be clear, 1 cent, which in the media is a 20%
I know.
increase in taxes, only generates
100,000.
100,000.
So that would pay for the officer, and then we could keep everything else the same.
Yep.
I mean, again, I think the survey is going to come back and say, yes, we're going to be
Yes.
happy with more public safety, and we're fine spending it, but we're not going to have that information back before we have to approve the budget, which is when we have to do the officer, but we could raise taxes on a Thursday in September.
No.
No.
Does the contract allow
When do you
for
have to do
us to,
With the fiscal year.
does the contract allow for us to say, okay, pull an officer out?
We could make that in there as part
Say
of
that
it.
again?
The contract, so we allow this officer because we believe that there's a need for it ahead of the survey. And then we recognize it, and then maybe the community says no to it or whatever, and is there any clause in there where you give them a 3 months heads up and say, okay, we're gonna get rid of this?
I guarantee there's,
We would have to do a
I'm
new
sure it'd be a
contract.
buyout type
Yeah.
clause, because they gotta find a
Yeah.
home
Yeah.
for that person.
We would have to amend the contract anyways to include it, but I mean, when they hire someone for a job, they've got that risk, so they may end up allowing us to do it, but yes, at a cost.
I just don't think we can make a decision of raising the taxes by
Without the
even
survey.
1 cent
But-
without the survey and doing it before we have to approve the budget is the
But if
middle.
we have a
middle
general
ground.
fund balance, can't
That's
we
right.
move money into it and
We
say
can.
after the budget?
Yeah.
And we say no to this now, and we say, you know what? We do need to add this and just put it in general
We
fund.
can.
Maybe
We can.
maybe we're halfway through the year and it's not 100,000 at that point, you're only putting 50,000.
So what we'll do is we'll talk about it more. We have 30 minutes each before your PRG comes in. We'll talk about it again in the February meeting.
Because it's on there.
And if y'all want to take a quick recess,
Just a quick question. I saw something about Ed being reassigned to something.
yes, and I don't know a lot of detail yet.
Was that a request by himself?
I don't know.
All right, let's go to recess and then we can turn that off and then
So we're not talking about village handbook.
we're going to eat lunch.
Okay, I'll make a motion to recess for lunch.
I mean, we can't
No,
vote on
I'm
anything,
doing a
so
motion. I'm just-
we're going to recess.
Yeah, we're on the recess.
Okay, turn that off.
Hold on a
Barbie,
minute, hold on a minute.
I have a 1 o'clock meeting, so you didn't want me for the village.
Yeah, yeah, we both have a 1 o'clock meeting.
You got it.